Kia ora tiwi, nau mai, hara mai, and welcome to this evening's Centre for Health Hawara Kōrero. Ko Natalie Hilterman tōku ingoa, and I'm lucky enough to be facilitating tonight's kōrero. Usually we open these Facebook Lives with a whakatauki, but tonight is unique as our topic is based on a whakatauki by Pa Ropata, who joins us on the panel tonight. Ka ora te whenua, ka ora te tangata. When the land is well, the people are well. What this means is that the well-being of the whenua directly impacts the well-being of our people who reside on it. If the land is healthy and thriving, it is more likely that the people living on it will also experience good health and well-being. So we hope that this evening's kōrero will give our whānau watching at home an understanding of the interconnected relationship between caring for our whenua and the well-being of our people and communities. If you have any specific pātai, please just private message us or pop your questions into the live and we will answer them as best we can. We'd love to hear from you. So please, Pa, if you would open our kōrero tonight with a karakia. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Nat. Kia ora tātou to anau, a kia nui tātou. E te atua matua ka harawa, e tuana matu o punonga te te motena, a tini mahi a mātou. Te mea nui I ana mātou ki a koe, hei manaake, hei arahi a mātou, kia mahi a mātou I runga te rangi mai, E runga te pai. E tono atu tēnei roto a hehu karaiti tō mātou araki. Amen.
Amen. Kia ora. So just to introduce our kōrero I tēnei pō, Hannah, can you just give us a little bit of an overview about our hawara kōrero tonight, please, e hoa?
Ai, kia ora, Nat, and kia ora whānau. Ka ora te whenua, ka ora te tangata. I guess, and this is an incredibly diverse topic, and as we were all saying the other day, we could go off in so many branches with this kōrero. But I guess it comes back to, and this is a very generalized comment, the fact that once upon a time, our lives were dependent, our safety, our livelihoods, our everything, on living in unison with our whenua, with the earth, with the environment around us. And unfortunately, and fortunately, with the developments of technology, the changes in lifestyles of human nature as it has become, we have grown independent in our own minds, and we have lost a lot of that connection and the meaning and the purpose. And unfortunately, we as people are suffering, and some of us pay a lot more attention than others to also what is happening with the whenua and the taiao around us as well. And unfortunately, our lives are still dependent on the livelihood and the well-being and the health of the taiao around us, the air we breathe, the soil that we eat from. They are depleted. They are not good. We have to treat our water. We have to filter our air. And we have to take supplements to make up for the fact that we're not getting the nutrients through our soils anymore. The trees are no longer producing the amount of oxygen that's needed to make up for the chemicals and fumes that we're pumping out. So this is a really poignant kōrero, and one that hopefully will stimulate a lot more discussions, both amongst whānau and hopefully eventually out into the wider, more decision-making people that help govern these day-to-day worlds that we live in. So thank you so much to these guys for being on this panel tonight. I have learnt so much from you all already, and I really look forward to more of our kōrero and continuing to learn from you too. Thanks.
Oh, beautiful, Hannah. Thank you. Before we get into our kōrero whānau, I hope that gives you a little bit of a grounding of what we'll be talking about I tēnei pō. But first, I'd just like to go around our panel and introduce everyone. So, Pa, could you please introduce yourself, please?
Kia ora anō, Annette, and kia ora tātou. Yes, I've been on the show before, so for lots of people, I'm not a new face, but for those who haven't seen me before, oh, sorry about that. Yes, I live here in Tauranga Moana. Really, I was brought up in Whanganui, and they were the people that taught me. And I'm officially retired, which basically means that I work 7 days a week, particularly with regard to rongoa and keeping that knowledge alive, and particularly our kaupapa. which we're working under the banner of Te Waiwaka, healing the mauri of the whenua. And it does sound very grim, the things that we could say about what's going wrong with our world, but the whole message of Te Waiwaka is to give people hope. And if we can give people hope, well, then we can really make change. And that's really, I suppose, the driving force for me, just sharing the hope, because there's every reason to be hopeful.
Oh, beautiful, Pa. Kia ora. John, did you want to introduce yourself now, please?
Kia ora koutou, ko John Burke, aku ingoa. Kia ora whānau. Yes, I've been on the panel before as well, and it's great to be back. So when I'm not in the gym, enjoying my time with my gym whānau, and I'm out on my farm, which is in Katikati. It's an environmental farm, and that's my little safe haven. I'm also a kiwifruit grower, but an organic kiwifruit grower. So learning a whole lot about natural systems without intervention from synthetic inputs, and trying to do things that we used to do back in the 50s and that sort of thing. So that's me.
Kia ora, John. Kaiwa?
Kia ora te whānau. My name is Kaiwa Savage. I come from all around the East Coast and down south as well, but I live here in Tauranga Moana as well. My background is that I'm studying full-time. I'm studying a Masters of Health Science and also Te Reo Māori. And I'm very lucky to learn under the guidance of Pa about rongoa Māori as well.
Oh, kia ora, ihoa. Hannah?
Oh, kia ora no whānau. Sure you've heard me talk many times before. But yeah, I'm Hannah. I am technically I'm a clinical exercise physiologist, but fortunate to have been working here with many of these beautiful people for many, many years now, which is actually quite scary to think. And I am from here in Tauranga Moana and currently reside between here and also Rotorua, and so get to enjoy the best of both worlds.
Oh, beautiful. And our final panelist tonight is Luke. Kia ora, Luke.
Kia ora whānau. Ko Luke Wilson Takuinga. I grew up in Hawke's Bay, but I reside in Ōtepoti, Dunedin, and I moved down here in 2002 to go to uni, never left. I grew up around horticulture and orchards in Hawke's Bay, but my work in mahi now is working in human health and the human health space, looking at more holistic health. And outside of work, I've got 4 kids that keep me busy, and we attempt to grow kai around the snow line in Dunedin, and it gets wrecked a lot. So there's me.
Kia ora, Luke. Well, whānau, welcome to our kōrero. So tonight's topic that we're going to have a talk about is ka ora te whenua, ka ora te tangata. Now, Pa, can you please open our discussion with what this whakatauki means to you?
Well, it means lots and lots of things. And I suppose the first thing to say is that when we talk about health, so often we worry about my health. It's a personal thing. And we don't worry enough about the context, the world around us, that in actual fact has a key part of our health, really. And when you go right back to it, all the things that we eat come out of the earth or out of the sea, our air, our water, all of those sorts of things. And so if the place that gives those things to us are not well, how do we expect to be well? And so, there's, and we've been discussing this a lot lately, we've got to, when we start talking about ka ora te whenua, we're saying healing the mauri of the whenua, healing the connections that enable life to thrive. And so my health depends on our health, and our health depends on the world around us. And if we find that our world around us isn't in good shape, that's going to affect us. And that's really, I suppose, the awareness that we're trying to build up in people. Is that enough of a start, Nat?
I love it, Pa. I love it. Does anyone else have any whakaaro on this particular pātai? What about from a health perspective for our panel? I'm going to pick on you, Hannah.
Okay, I was waiting for Luke. But yeah, and Luke can add to this. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I love what Pa just said there in regards to the fact that, yeah, when we think about health, and I do it, I think about my own health, and how that's going to affect me. But certainly, and for me personally, the outdoors has always played such a huge role in my health. Being out in the whenua and being lost in the bush for hours on end is my happy place. If I've got problems to solve in the world, that's where I go. And it's only been recently when I've been out and lucky enough to be in some areas that are predator free and being able to listen to some birds that I haven't heard for years and listen to many of them, has been amazing. And we encourage everyone that walks in our doors that actually the first place you need to go to find your health is to get outside, to build that connection back to the whenua, and whether that's just a sense of grounding, stopping and literally smelling the roses, or growing your own food, with your own gardens, or just going to the ocean, setting foot in it and paying attention to what's actually around you. And I mean, I'm almost sick of telling everyone we live in such a beautiful place. We all know it. So go and experience it. That's really what I encourage everyone to do. And we know that it has such strong physiological effects. We can measure the changes in heart rate and heart rate variability just after going outside for 30 seconds and actually taking some deep breaths. That's the impact that it can have on us. So yeah, I'm sure Luke can add to that a little bit.
Oh, sorry, I was just in awe of what Pa said, and it took a little while to get my head around it. So, yeah, I think the critical thing is the whenua is the foundation for life. I think, and the scenario is that your health, community health, every health well-being is centered around that foundation, whether it be the whenua or the environment. And so physical health comes from that, spiritual health comes from that, mental, emotional health, family and social health comes from that. And I guess for me, I'm in a very privileged place to work where I work, and my motivator is to try and improve holistic health. And that's why I'm there. But you always have to then caveat with your own bias of your own health, your own whānau health. It's quite refreshing seeing seeing through the eyes of your kids. So, I've got a 16-month-old son, and he'll stop and smell the roses or point out things that we just walk past in our built environment, right? So actually spending that time exploring the environment for me is quite important through their eyes as well as mine. It's a nice way to reconnect.
Such a beautiful perspective, and that really does kind of show our whānau at home that kind of impact that a healthy land has on the health of our whānau and our people too, our tinana. So what are some things that help you to apply ka ora te whenua, ka ora te tangata, Kaiwa?
Thanks, Nat, and thanks for all the beautiful kōrero. I was just embracing all of that. So for me, I think I've been pretty lucky to learn under Pa, but also some of the frameworks, obviously me being a student, I've looked at a lot of different frameworks within health and the environment. And for me, the Atua Matua framework from Ihirangi Hiki has really stood out to me. A couple of years ago, I did an internship, and I was lucky enough to actually go to his house and learn from him directly, go into the environment and use the environment to get through some really hearty exercise. And he taught us about the atua that were involved, and it was about removing yourself from being the focus and using the environment around you to get through mentally, emotionally, physically, and just be present in that moment. And the atua matua framework is basically, instead of putting ourselves at the center like Pa was just talking about, but instead putting the environment, and we are the byproduct of our environment, and we are the incidental benefactors of the benefits of the environment around us. So that's been a big part of me, and that's stuck with me since learning that a couple of years ago. And so it is definitely hard when you've grown up living you-centered, but that doesn't mean that we can't return back to what our tupuna were practicing with being environmental centered. And yeah, that's, yeah.
Phew. Does anyone else have any other ways that they incorporate ka roa te whenua, ka roa te tangata into their lives? Luke, you spoke about seeing things through your children's eyes. What else do you do with your kids that just gives you a real different perspective and connection with the whenua?
Oh, I think that's comes back to that. They're always excited when they see something new. They're always excited when they see wildlife. They're always excited when they see new plants and insects. And we're lucky where we live that, you know, we've got kiriru that fly around all over the place and tui and all that. So I guess the scenario is for us, if we can, weather dependent, right? We've got to get outside. We've got to get them involved outside. And that's probably the main thing, just interacting with the whenua, the wind, the rain, the snow when there's snow, and all the outdoor spaces that we're luckily to have within 5 minutes in Ōtepoti Dunedin. So yeah, we're kind of quite lucky there.
I guess and coming from us as a mahi, or our area of work here, we as a team acknowledged this year that despite the fact that we work within this health space and the whenua and the taiao has always played such a huge and important role in, I guess, the prescriptions that we provide our whānau and anyone that walks in the door, we actually haven't been very good as a mahi whānau on walking that talk ourselves as a ropu. So one of the things we actually we started off a bit slow, I'm going to grant that, but we've ramped it up a little bit this year, is actually having days where as a team we go out and we've called them our give back days, and it's not to give back to ourselves, but it's actually to give back to the whenua, to give thanks to the whenua for being there for us. So unfortunately I was crook, but I heard it was amazing. The rest of the team actually headed out to John's farm and planted, had an amazing day. Walking up and down hills. I heard some of the hills were quite steep, but planting a lot of trees out there. And so that's something that for us as a team is really, really important to be able to do. And so we've got a whole lot of other projects that we want to do to support those that have been equally as awesome to us, but actually to help support the whenua and get our team to perhaps do some things that they probably also don't do in their day-to-day life, or expose them to different areas and different concepts, different ideas, in the hope that, yeah, it can all just become a normal part of our lives. Yeah, so thanks for that, John, and we're I think we're coming back.
It's so good to have you guys out, and you did real good mahi. And one of the things that, well, for me anyway, and I think Kaewa, you might want to comment, but it's about learning too. So for me, my journey started years ago, but I suddenly realised, you know, I know my basics around my trees and my manu, but I heard this bird singing above me, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And so I got onto my phone and cut long story short, it was a riro, but I've probably seen them flitting around all the time, but I never knew what they were. So then I thought, man, I'm going to need to know all my manu. Great way to learn te reo in reverse, if you like, and all my trees and that. So that learning experience becomes really important as well in terms of connecting. And it invigorates your brain, and it makes you more understanding of the environment when you go into it. Sure, you can listen and you can smell, but also understand what's going on and observe. And I learned a lot from that from Pa. You know, it's just standing back and seeing what's going on, but over time, just seeing there's observations and seeing what happens.
I love the kōrero tonight, guys. Ai tika. How does caring for the whenua and papatūānuku promote a wider lens on the health of people and communities? Luke?
I think it comes back to the initial kōrero that it's the foundation of, the life force. And I think we need to look after it in a reciprocal way to expect it to look after us. I think that's probably the more eloquent way of trying to say it than what I did earlier.
That's exactly right. Any other whakaaro?
Yeah, I think the more it's like anything, the more you get to know a person, the better you get to know a person. And in time, in actual fact, you see things that once upon a time you never noticed. And I always say to people when I'm running a rongoa course, you might find this hard to believe, but the person who's going to learn the most this weekend is me. Because they think, well, I've been on this job ever since I was a little person. But in actual fact, the more you know, the more you can see. And all of us in our own areas of expertise, we become expert, not because we've done an apprenticeship, but we've worked at it, and we've developed a whole lot of skills of seeing and doing that we didn't have. And like you can look at water running down, and after a while you can actually see if is the water well or is it not? Is there something wrong with that water? And if you try and describe what you can see, you can't. But your sense, in actual fact, tells you those things. And for me at the moment, and that's why I'm sort of worried, because I'm watching, and there's a lot of things that are not happening the way they usually happen. And that to me, how it is when a person's going to have a nervous breakdown, and they smile and talk and say they're okay, but you can see them doing funny little things or forgetting things or dropping things. And that person might say they're okay, but looking at them, no, they're not. And that's what's happening to Papatūānuku, that in actual fact, you can see the stress in her, and so in actual fact, to me, the biggest cause of sickness for us here, not just in Aotearoa, maybe we're much better off here, but not nearly as good as we should be, is loss of that connection to the whenua that Hannah spoke about right at the very, very beginning, that we don't have a living, knowing, feeling, touching understanding of the whenua. We just know all the stuff about it. And it's just like getting to know a person. I tell the kids sometimes in springtime, let's go looking for some Martians in the bush. And they think that I'm a bit nutty, but when you see those green-hooded orchids, tutukiwi, the little thing, the horns sticking up and stripes on their head, and they sort of look at you in a furious way. All those little details, in actual fact, are part of our getting to know. And so the big thing is, yes, we go outside. I remember meeting some people up in the Kaimais one day, and I asked them if they'd seen any rata trees flowering, and they've been walking for 2 days. Oh, no, you don't have rata trees in this North Island. They have to go down to the South Island. And I said, so what's that over there? Oh, that's a rata tree. Well, how come you can walk through the bush for 2 days and not even see them? and this is our big challenge. Our first challenge to find this sort of healing is to actually get to know the whenua so that we can properly connect to it.
It reminds me a little bit of a documentary that I saw recently called The Alpinist. And it was a guy who would climb mountains, and he could do them incredibly quickly. But his whakaaro was he could do it so quickly with no gear because he was connected. He could, the wind, the way the snow fell, the everything, the weather conditions, everything, because he was so in tune with his environment. He just knew. He was just so in tune with it. Beautiful pa, I love it. So what are some key environmental factors that influence the well-being of the land, and how do they affect health and the prosperity of a community? Kaiwa?
Yeah, well, that's a tricky one, but there's lots of environmental factors, because there's obviously the pollution and the air quality and the rubbish that's being left and the bird life and the biodiversity. But a healthy environment will reflect upon its local community, and that is why it is important to have the balance and the shared responsibility of kaitiakitanga. And for those that don't know about kaitiakitanga, that's the guardianship that we share with one another, but also the environment. And I think it's just about, the environment, everything in the environment is in tune with everything in the environment, but we're the ones that aren't in tune with it anymore. And I think we need to obviously get back to that space and learn from the environment, because it's teaching us a lot along the way of all the climate change and all of that. And we just need to learn to tune back into what's happening around us.
Any other whakaaro?
For me, it's that holistic approach too, isn't it? Like, it's never one thing, and everything is connected. And I just mentioned the manu before. I mean, without a strong bird life, you're not going to have a healthy ngahere. So the manu just play that so important role in terms of spreading seed and just keeping that whole environment alive. But it's only one factor. So it's actually looking at all the little bits and pieces that make up that whole ecosystem, and making sure all parts of that are healthy as they can be.
I also think so. What you just said, John. It's like every small step can help, right? Because it's a sum of all the parts. So it's a big journey that everyone's got to go on, and a shared journey. But if everyone starts putting a small step forward, then that helps. So we have a lot of frustration down here in Oripuri that we don't have green waste bins. And for people living in the city, there's very little places to get rid of their green waste. So when we first started, we just chucked all our food waste on the ground and just covered it with dirt. It's surprising how much the whenua and the biodiversity started increasing then, and then we then could afford a compost bin, so that we did all that. And and we were doing that at one point. We were in a little apartment in town, and people told us it was a bit smelly, so we had to bury it in pots deeper down so that would work. But I think small steps help. Well, I'd hope that here in Oripuri that the council wakes up and smells the roses and actually provides green waste places for people, or even if it's not a bin, or an accessible way that it could be put into compost to nourish the whenua and things like that. In terms of the manu, we've got lots of strawberry plants at home. When they eat our strawberries and get and raid the strawberries at Christmas time, we have strawberries all over our section, and our neighbours do as well. So, it's quite good to see.
Well, I love it.
Look, that's a real good point, isn't it? We can't save the world, and I think just doing one little thing on your own, which is something good for the environment, is so rewarding. Just and it's just knowing that doing one step at a time, you're helping to make Papanuku more healthy.
Yeah. See, to me, the key is water. To me, water is like the blood in your body. The blood carries all the air, all your nutrients, or your oxygen, and it takes away all the waste products. And that's what the water does. And the rivers and the streams are the veins and the arteries of the landscape. And just like with your body, if your blood isn't good, you start getting pimples, or start getting gout, and all sorts of other sorts of symptoms. And the same with your water. If the water isn't clean, isn't clear, then the body starts to get all sorts of sicknesses. And those are the ones that we get, like they have in Queenstown at the moment, with that waterborne disease, and Havelock North a few years ago where 3,000 people got sick. And so if we can look after our water, then our health is going to improve. It'd be wonderful. We never had to use chlorine again in New Zealand. And so what John's doing on his farm and looking after that whole catchment actually is looking after everything in the catchment. And the fish, people like fishing. Well, how can you have a healthy fish in the harbour? if only poru is coming out of the land. And so it's that whole connection, and really, to me, I try to say, now, what's the key one? Well, water is one of the key ones. And you know, we can't do it ourselves. That's why the birds are important, because they spread the seeds, and the seeds cover the ground, and that helps clean the water, and so on and so on and so on. So it's just so wonderful, really.
Beautiful. So how do we know when the hauora of the whenua is improving, Pa?
You look for the tohu, and for example, you look around and see, you know, what seedlings are coming up. You know, if you're only getting weeds coming up, you know, weeds are sort of like getting a rash when your blood's gone wrong, you know. But if you see what belongs coming through, if you see little trees coming up all over the show, then you know that things are going right, you know. And that's getting back to what different ones of us have been saying. Learning to watch closely and notice things you haven't seen before. And so for me, my thing, the flowers have almost finished, so now I'm looking for seedlings. I'm waiting to see the rewa popping up. I haven't seen the rewa yet, but plenty of karangu coming through, and so on and so on and so on. And then, of course, the convolvulus is coming out. Well, but you know, noticing these things, you know, and then you notice how when certain things grow, other things don't grow, and vice versa. It's all of those sorts of things, you know, but it's being in touch that we can adjust to what belongs in my little backyard or my farm or my neighborhood, as opposed to reading a book, watching a lovely DVD or whatever it is, when some wonderful person in some other part of the world talks about them. They guide us, but we don't copy them. We actually are inspired by them, and we learn from where we actually live and make our homes.
John, have you got anything else to add on that? I mean, do you want to give us a little bit of a rundown on your farm? How did it come about?
Sorry, I couldn't forget my mute. Yeah, well, it's a community thing, and where our farm is, we happen to be at the top of the catchment, and so we're the first recipients of the water out of the Kaimai estate. And so we were told over 20 years ago that the farm that we just bought is one of the most degraded in the Western Bay of Plenty. It was polluting the Reria Tukahia estuary, mainly with sediment. The parori that used to be there in abundance had disappeared because the seagrass had gone. I think there's something like 60 hectares of seagrass in that estuary, and in about 1950, and now it's zero. So the Naitama whareua, you know, their kaimauana, their pipi beds and so on have been destroyed. And so our goal was to say, well, let's make sure that our awa, we clean up our awa, and the water that leaves our farm is in the same quality as when it enters, and that's pretty well where it is now. But that involved building a whole lot of repo, like the one behind me here, you know, little sponges or kidneys to filter that water, and do a whole lot of planting. And we're still going, and thanks to my Jim whānau, we've got some more ngahere planted. Yeah, and we'll be keeping on doing that. But it's become a community thing. So where we started now, we have 20 neighbours. We're all doing pest management together. And then we're looking down our roadways and saying, oh, we've got all these weeds growing up our roadways. Let's not rely on the Western Bay going and doing those. We just can't do it ourselves. So we're having working bees and that sort of thing. And that's hugely bonding for our community. We've got a whole lot of people from a whole lot of different walks of life. And they come and meet in our wool shed at night. And we, you know, maybe 2 or 3 meetings a year, and we work out our plans for the year and what we're going to do. So that's very important, that community bonding and vision and focus working together, as well as what we can do individually. If we can work as teams, even if it's only 2 or 3 your neighbours or something like that, that helps bringing your community, and it's got a lot of gives you a lot more self-esteem and purpose with what you want to do.
And that's really interesting, John. I mean, I love that whole kind of concept because what you've done is you've taken almost like a project, but made it not the responsibility, but you've drawn people in to do better. How do we leverage our networks better? Or what did you do to create that community that is willing to give their time and make changes? Because once they start, it's that first step that you kind of spoke about before. Once you start, then you're conscious of making better decisions for the health of either ourselves or the whenua, te tai ao. But then the more you do, the more you learn as per Pa's whakaaro, and the more you want to do. So how do we create that consciousness and leverage our networks to create change in our community so that people will stand up and make better decisions?
Yeah, it's creating that why, isn't it? It's creating the why, and some of it could be just as simple as one of the things that really. Now we've got farmers around us who are, pretty hardcore farmers, but then we had a session where we wanted to talk to them about fish passageways. So the kōkapu, the whitebait, they were barriers right up through our catchment. So we brought these bunch of red mick farmers down into the stream, and we had a guy show us what was happening and what was required, and then he showed us some films about how these little kōkapu, the ones with the claspers, those are the kōkapu, aren't they, Pa? The ones that try to climb out of the bucket. And that was one of the things we told them. Look, when you catch a bunch of whitebait, they're all in a bucket, right? But some of these little tackers are trying to climb out, and they're the ones with the claspers on their fins that climb to the top of the catchment. And so these little guys are waiting at the bottom of these little, say it's a culvert or something. They can't get through because we slapped the culvert in there. But as soon as you put some baffles or a rope or something in there, they're away. They head on up the catchment. You start teaching some of the farmers in the community around that, and that really turns them on. It's a simple little thing, and they find it really quite exciting. So little things like that can become the why, and then it just builds on that and becomes quite infectious.
Oh, I love it. And there's no blame. Like this is a problem. What are we going to do about it? And how can we work together to make it better, right? I love that, John. That's so good.
Correct.
So good. So good. All right, another part-time. How can educating people about the importance of sustainable land use and conservation efforts positively impact their behaviours and choices? Oh, everyone's smiling. Does that mean nobody wants me to ask them? Hannah?
Oh golly. I mean, how could it not? Yeah, and I'm going to definitely leave this for one of these others to answer in more detail. But I mean, I think like if we there's such uproar at the moment about the cost of living, right? It's so expensive to eat. Our vegetables are so expensive. It's not sustainable for us to rely on produce that has come from not even grown in New Zealand. It's come from America, and we're consuming their kai when we should be doing things for ourselves here. So in a way, getting whānau to be involved in growing and planting our own kai, whether that's in our own backyards or going to a community garden, or as a school group having school gardens. We've got a couple of marae that are setting them up. We've got all sorts of community groups that are now setting up gardens, and people are getting their hands dirty and they are being involved, and they're being amazed at how limp the beetroot goes once you pull it out of the ground. You got to cook that thing within like 8 hours, otherwise it's all soft. It's amazing. We don't know that if you get it from the supermarket. So I think, as a very brief part of your question then, that sustainability requires us to be more aware of what's happening around us and the little things that we can do to support our own sustainability. It's going to take less out of our pocket, but it's also going to enhance the quality of the kai that we're eating, the connection with our whenua. And we're going to know if we put nutrients into our soil, that kai is going to taste so much better. So that's my little part. I'll pass the raka on to someone else now.
Any other whakaaro?
Yeah, I think so. I think the scenario is it's also not what's coming out of the whenua, it's what we're putting in, right? So I've got a bit of a problem where synthetic fertilizers are coming in from overseas, and then we're getting palm stuff that's coming in and deforesting other areas of the world and things to feed people and things like that. And I think that's not taken into the food systems, and I guess it's flogging the land and the whenua where, you know, there's other sources. So part of the whole quarter that we're having is quite interesting, because John mentioned about the kidneys and the land. You know, the kidneys in our body. Technology can be good, it can be bad. But I was reading something today, and it's quite funny how it pops up, because it just came through an email today about technology that is looking at separating human urine. And why do we want to separate human urine from our waste source? Because you can concentrate it and then use that to nourish the whenua, because it's got similar properties to what these fertilizers have that we bring in from overseas. And it may reduce the poisons that are going out into our moana and out to our oceans, which is quite an interesting little thing, which would be quite useful, I guess. You know, up in Tamaki at the moment, they're worried about the water quality there because of the septic systems being overloaded and all the stuff going into the water. Well, if you separate the more solid from the more liquid, you know, that's going to reduce the burden on those systems that we have. So that could be an interesting way that, you know, we've got a big population. We produce waste. Some of that waste might be used as nutrients, maybe.
Love it.
Luke, just you mentioned about digging a hole in the backyard and putting your food waste there. I mean, for me, I was really shocked that we have trucks come around and collect all our food waste and take it away to a dump somewhere, when what we should have been doing is handing out compost bins to everyone and teaching everyone to compost at home, and then use that compost to put into their gardens to invigorate the soil biome. And so you're not using any synthetic fertilizer in your garden, in your veggies. You got a real healthy organic garden. I mean, some of it's around education as well. People are trying to do the right thing, but we can help ourselves a whole lot more. And that in turn gets people back, as we said before, growing your own gardens is so important, you know, producing your own foods, hugely satisfying.
Yeah, and I think it's a matter of getting started, and it might just be some little thing, you know, like, for example, having a few herbs on the windowsill. People live in flats, and so you've got your own sort of garnishing for some of your cooking and things like that. That's the beginning of the journey. And I think the big thing at the moment is how do we get more people beginning, you know, and then how do we build that? How do we grow momentum and things like that, you know? But, you know, I remember many years ago, I was in the Philippines, and I went in the sort of at a bus stop, and there was a big sign up on the urinal: do not spit into the urinal, because the urinal is safe for medicinal. Urine is safe for medicinal purposes. And I've never forgotten that, you know, that our waste products, when you buy urea from overseas, I mean, that's all that urine is really, you know, and gout is caused by the fact that, in actual fact, the uric acid in your body builds up and crystallizes. Well, if you drink lots of water, you're much less likely to get gout. And then you put that women back into the whenua, well, then you're actually fertilizing. And so, you know, it's a question of once you get started, you see more and more possibilities. And then once you get excited, you start talking to people and showing off a little bit, and then you get more people. So we just got to sort of grow this whole sustainability thing, rather than having some person lecturing us and telling us what we should do and can't do, and so on and so on. And I think that's what's really happening here in Tauranga. We have Sustainable Backyards Month every autumn run by EnviroHub. And it's just amazing the practical little things. You know, just one thing, for example, people saving coffee grounds because they're really good fertilizers in their garden. Hairdressers saving the hair that they cut off because it's really good for the worms in your worm farm, and so on and so on and so on. And I see you nodding there. John, I don't think you're contributing much on that score.
I was thinking it, but you went there.
I couldn't resist that, sorry.
So good, so good. Awesome, awesome, kōrero. Did we want to have a talk about climate change? What is climate change, Pa? And
well, climate change is when the climate's changing. There's something what it is. And when you look at the history, the geologists look at it, the planet has never been stable. It's never had the same temperature for X number of years on end. It's either been getting warmer or getting colder. And so we've had about 30 ice ages in the last, or 23 ice ages in the last 3 million years, you know, so it's been coming and going. And we're just coming out of an ice age, which is a bit scary, you know, so actually it's going to get warmer. You used to be able to walk out to Mare Island because it was dry the whole way. That's how much the sea has risen in the last 20,000 years, 130 metres or so. So I hope nobody watching lives in Papamoa because you won't have to go far to the beach before long. But the thing is, the big issue about climate change at the moment is never before, the experts tell us, has the planet warmed so quickly, and it's because of what we humans are doing. And so we're not just talking about climate change, but our contribution as people, as humans, to actually hurrying up this natural process to the extent, see, for example, New Zealand used to be a tropical country, and our fossil record will show us that all the tropical plants that used to live here. But the change happens slowly and plants adapt. What's happening now is the change is happening so quickly that the plants and the animals and the fish and the birds can't adapt. And that's why we're losing so many species. They say 60% of native species, plant species, are in danger of extinction at the moment. You know, and so really when we're talking about climate change, we're talking about man-induced climate change. And that's our big issue. And part of that, of course, is the fact that the rubbish that we're producing is actually affecting the whenua's ability to cope with all the stresses we put onto it. You know, Chris Battersall, a professor here in Tauranga, saying out of 1 kg of mud from anywhere in Tauranga Harbour with so many tens of thousands of plastic particles inside of it. You know, and so climate change and our pollution, you know, we're not just having a heat crisis, but we're also having a pollution crisis. And you know how it is when you drink poisoned water in the end, it kills you. So we're poisoning our world. And that's the thing that we've really got to take account of.
Any other whakaaro on this? It's quite a heavy topic, but I will go back to your earlier kōrero, Pa, about hope. So that's facts, right? So unfortunately, we're polluting our taiao. But if we talk about hope, there are things that we can do.
Well, the thing is, I'm lucky. I travel the whole country dealing with communities on a real, you know, grassroots level. And I see so many wonderful things happening, like John's farm. Lots and lots of amazing things. And so I feel hopeful because we're gradually building momentum. And you see people that are in places that have been wrecked by these cyclones over the last year or so. But you see them rebuilding and rebuilding differently. and you see a new energy and a new determination, like happened here in Tauranga when the arena ran aground. Terrible, terrible tragedy, but it brought people together, and our way of caring for our environment stepped forward from that. So, we can be, lack of hope disempowers people, paralyzes you. And because you've got no hope, you stop even caring for yourself. Lots of people have health problems because they've got no hope. So they eat too much or drink too much or work too hard or whatever too much. And if we can give people hope that there is a future and a bright future, then we start to actually positively care. And that's the message we've got to. But remember that the more we make it a we world instead of a me world, the more hope we have. When we try and isolate ourselves, I have the right to this, I that, everything else like that. Well, I can only have everything I want if I trample over you. And that's not actually, so in a traditional community, the rights of the community are greater than the rights of the individual. The community has a duty to care for each individual, but it's a wholeness and the wellness of the whole community that in actual fact enables each individual to live well and be well.
And that's our society, right? We've kind of moved away from living in community groups and being supportive and supporting each other to trying to do everything ourselves in these kind of silos. Aye. So on that, so how are there any strategies or how can communities ensure that the whenua's well-being, building resilience and adapting to a changing climate? Like, what are some, how do we build resilience? Anyone? Huh?
I mean, how are we building resilience? Because it really has started. But, the first thing we've got to get over is stop being too worried about the me. Like people always say, we need to plant more trees. But here in Tauranga, people have been going around poisoning trees because it blocks their view, and so on and so on and so on. Or because of birds poop on their cars. We've just got to sort of, I think the biggest handbrake on building resilience is our own reluctance to actually contribute. We are more actually focused on claiming and retaining our entitlements. So, we've got to grow up, little people are very selfish, and as parents, we teach them how to share, how to care. And we blame the kids for being selfish, but how many of us grown-up people, especially us grey-headed ones, are actually so wrapped up in our selfishness that we actually have bad opinions about lots of other people.
I think for resilience, I think we need to learn not to try and control the environment. We need to walk with the environment, right? So I grew up in the Heretaga Plains, and the big rivers up there, the Ngāruroa, etc. Their river channels have been narrowed down and put in little streams with big flood banks. Well, that's not going to work, because every now and again there's a lot of rain that comes down and the awas fill up and they bust them. So, I think you've got to learn that there's a floodplain. You've got to let it wild and do what it needs to do. Then it won't wash out so much sediment. It won't wash out all the fish, because they grew up on trout fishing and doing other things up there as well, and getting fish with freshwater crays and stuff. And my dad was just saying the other day, there's nothing left because the river flows were that fast, because they're in these channels, everything got washed out. So, I think resilience is going to have to be learning to live with the environment, like all the other species have to, and we're going to have to do it faster than what we've ever done it before. So, we can't fight the environment. We've got to work how to walk hand in hand with all this change, unfortunately, because it's happening. I think the hope thing is that with COVID, even though that was a hard thing to go through, it showed how quickly Mother Nature can start healing itself.
Oof, love it, Luke. He kaiwa, as a rangatahi, pihia tō whakaro.
Well, I think it's pretty cool seeing what the younger generations, even younger than me, are doing in schools. I actually was working with some rangatahi at a school camp a couple of weeks ago, and I was really surprised to learn that the whole camp was about conservation and learning about the taiao, how to live in the taiao, or navigating species monitoring, and they were only an intermediate. And then to also learn that at their kura they have a marakai, and they're learning to like grow their own kai. It's all these skills that resilient run, but knowing that I can change my pathway and I can learn, and I hope that like whatever I share about this kaupapa is going to be a ripple effect amongst other rangatahi and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love that, sharing the knowledge from one generation to the next. And I love how you said rangatahi even younger than me.
You just hang on being a rangatahi as long as possible.
Oh, that's exactly my point. All right then, whānau, thank you so much for jumping online and listening to our kōrero tonight. I'd love to send a massive mihi to our amazing panel. Thank you, each and every one of you, for your beautiful whakaaro and your kōrero tonight. We always kind of close out our hauora kōrero with one pātai. And if there was one piece of advice for our whānau that you could impart for our whānau listening at home, what would that be? Hannah?
The one time I was actually hoping to go last, but hopefully this one.
Getting messages. Please let me go. Please let me go.
Sorry. This one's hopefully actually going to be a little bit different to what these guys are going to say, but it's something that I encourage a lot of our guys to do, but to actually walk outside. And if you're fortunate enough to have a forest or to have a bush or a gully or something where you can stand in the soil and look up and you're surrounded by trees and branches and plants all around you, go and do it. Go and stand there or sit there or lie there and look up. And we do this exercise where you have to name 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can hear, 3 things that you can smell, 2 things that you can touch, and 1 thing that you can taste. And if you do that and you notice what's actually around you and how freaking cool that is, you're having a massive effect on your own body in that moment. But also it's just that acknowledgement that holy hell, we have this awesome thing that's happening around us, and let's protect it for everyone, for all of our generations to come, to be able to experience the same thing. Yeah, that's my one.
Love it. John?
I think just choose one thing, if you're talking as an individual, that you think you could do just to help Papatūānuku. And it could be anything so small. And it might be a goal that you might set yourself for the next month or the next year, but just set yourself that goal and work on it, and you'll get a whole lot of satisfaction in it. And that's connected to the taiao, so it's connecting you to the whenua.
Love it, John. Pa?
Well, I think that, you know, next time you see someone doing something good for the whenua, let them know you notice and thank them for it. You know, because so often people are discouraged because nobody notices. And so if we start encouraging each other and noticing each other, we're really going to turn things around.
Love it. Kaiwa?
I think my one's probably tying back into that hope kind of kaupapa under Te Waiwaka, and not feeling like with all the things that are going on in the world and all the differences, don't feel like you don't make a difference, because if everyone does their part and does what they can, then we're going to make a difference. And especially being in a small country, we might have different political views or religious views, but the one thing that we can all agree on is we need to look after our environment and we need to reconnect. And we've got a lot of mātauranga Māori that we can use to learn how to do that amongst our communities, and it's just going to create a ripple effect between generations and whānau. Yeah.
Oof, love it from the rangatahi. And finally, Luke.
I don't know if I want to be last now. I thought I was going to get booted out by the security guards. Anyway, for me, I think it's just to be a bit considerate of how heavy our footprints are on the whenua, right? So, you know, I like to try and tread lightly. Obviously, you can't do that in everything. So, yeah, starting with something small. And then once you start on that small journey, it just seems to perpetuate, right? It's in your head, and you just then think, hey, what else could I do? How else could I help other people? I do like the idea, and I will use that now, is making a conscious effort when I see other people doing stuff that's good for the whenua, good for the environment, and saying, patting them on the back. I think positive reinforcement works really well. I know it works really well in our whānau with our kids. So, you know, there's a few learnings that have come on from the panel as well, not only hopefully for the whole whānau that are listening.
Oh, kia ora, Luke. Well, kia ora whānau. I hope you enjoyed our kōrero tonight. If you have any other pātai, please post them on the Centre for Health Facebook page. Otherwise, Paul Mārie, and I'll ask Pā to close us with a karakia. Kia ora, Pā.
Well, thank you, everybody, and thank you, Nat. Kia ora tātou, kia anui tātou. E te atua mātou ka harawa, e wakawete ana mātou ki a koro manakitanga kirunga ki a mātou. O mātou manakitanga kirunga ki a mātou, me o mātou kāinga o mātou mānau. Kia noho mātou rungi te rangi mai rungi te pai. E tono mātou tēnei roto i kaiti tō mātou areki. Amen. God bless us all.
Ka kite whānau.
Ka kite. Ai.